Juneteenth is a national holiday that celebrates the end of slavery in America. Even though it wasn't recognized at a federal level until 2021, the longest standing Juneteenth celebration in Illinois is right here in Rockford, as Wednesday marks the 34th year of the event. Organizers and attendees say Wednesday is more than a celebration. It's a chance to educate the community on this holiday while bringing people together.
We need to create a greater awareness and understanding of, like I said, what led up to this and what needs to happen. And it's just important. So many people are just uneducated about how this came about and not the whole process of hundreds of years of why we're in position to be able to celebrate this and why we should be celebrating.